Welcome to the first house church gathering. I'm really glad that the government has lifted restrictions on the amount of visitors we can have in houses, which has meant that even though we're not yet back to being able to gather together in our building, we are able to gather in homes. And so it was really fun putting together house churches of different people. And we have 7 of those happening across our church, which is great. There's some in the morning and some in the afternoon. And these groups we hope will run fortnightly on a fairly regular rhythm. And it will be one way that we can be the church, have community and fun, and do spiritual life together while still learning and growing as we keep working our way through the Beatitudes. So each fortnight, when you gather with the people that you're now sitting with in this room, and maybe any that might not have made it this week, we'll have some content delivered like this on video, which will just guide your group through looking at different things. And it's one way that each of it, we can all stay together on the same page despite meeting in different places and at different times. And we'll keep working our way through the Beatitudes. And so I hope that together you all just have fun and you find this a really lovely time to be together. I want to encourage you to include food in your gathering, whether that's morning tea or afternoon tea. Maybe sometimes you'd even like to gather for brunch or for dinner, depending on the time that you're with each other. But I just think that this is one good way that we can just keep learning and growing and being together as a church. And I want each group to have fun. So you might find that you're in a group with some people that you know really well. You might find yourself in a group with some people you've never met, or some people that you haven't actually spent much time with. But either way, I just hope that it's really fun and that you have a good time. I know I'm really looking forward to it. So just a few little things we probably need to run through on our first one. In terms of COVID rules, while these gatherings are in a home, they are still somewhat considered to be a church gathering. And so we don't need to abide by strict social distancing rules because we are gathered in homes, but there's just a few little things that we need to be mindful of. That is that if you are sick, please don't come along. Just send your apologies so that we can keep germs in one place. And the other thing is that we do actually need to keep a record of who attends which house church when. We need to keep those attendance records for 4 weeks. That's just a government regulation so that if somebody does test positive for COVID, it's easy for us as an organisation to trace contacts. And so we will just be keeping records of that, just so you know. But everything else, just make sure you practice good hand hygiene and enjoy and have fun. We're going to keep working through the Beatitudes over the coming weeks, although we're not going to do that today because I just felt like the first gathering should be a time when we just spend a little bit of time with each group catching up and getting to know one another a little bit better. So far we've done, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And we've done, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And so from our next gathering, we'll move on to blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And then we'll keep moving our way through the Beatitudes as house churches gather. It is possible that come August, we might look at how we can organise some kind of gathering in our church building, but we'll keep you updated on how that unfolds as time passes. But we won't be doing anything corporately in the building before August. So we'll have these house churches running fortnightly. So this is something you can kind of sink into and begin to enjoy. So what we're going to do this week together, you in your group, is I actually want each of our groups to just spend some time really listening to one another and also sharing just vulnerably with one another a little bit about what life has been like for you over the past couple of months. So this for each group is going to be like 2 things. It's going to be an opportunity for each person to share honestly and as vulnerably as they feel comfortable to share And it's also going to be an opportunity for everyone to practice their listening skills, which I think are really important in any dynamic, but especially in a small group dynamic. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to give each group the time for each person to share for a maximum of 5 minutes what life has been like for you over the last couple of months. And everyone else is in the group is just simply going to listen. So at Central, one of the things we really value is authenticity and vulnerability. I really believe that transformation as humans into wholeness and healing and all that we're meant to be happens best when we're honest with God and when we're honest with one another. Whenever in any context, in any relationship, whether it's in our relationship with God or when it's in our relationship with others, when we hide or we dodge or we avoid things, in some ways we're creating closed pockets of space that we don't let truth and light and love into. And so we really value transparency and honesty at Central, and we want to keep pushing into those values as a culture and as a community, because we believe that it's through those things that the transforming presence of the Holy Spirit does his best work in our lives. And so I want to invite you, when it's your turn to share, that you would actually consider sharing as honestly and as vulnerably as you feel comfortable with the people in your group, that you don't seek to dodge and hide, but if you feel comfortable, just to be honest. And then I want everyone to really practice their listening skills. So I just want to give a little bit of teaching about listening to start with, and then I'm going to give you a whole lot of space to just catch up and connect. Okay, so listening is actually a really important relational skill that we need to keep developing in our lives. For most people, hearing comes quite naturally, like we can hear things, but hearing is not actually the same as listening. We can hear the sounds around us, but when it comes to really listening to someone who's speaking to us, that actually requires so much more of us as people than simply hearing sounds. And so in this exercise, when you're going to be listening to one another, I actually want you to pay attention to your listening and to actually practice being really present to the person that you're listening to. So actually, before we go any further, like one of the things that's really important when we're listening well is that we're actually really present and that we're not somewhere else. So, and that means being present with our bodies, but also with our minds and our emotions. So why not just take a minute to be present here where you are? So maybe you would just like to notice the seat that you're sitting in. What does it feel like? Are you comfortable at the moment? And then maybe you can just consider the temperature of the room. Are you feeling warm, or is it a little bit cool? What are the sounds that you can hear? Maybe you can hear the kids, if there's kids a part of your house church. Maybe you can hear outside noises. Maybe there's a clock ticking somewhere. But what are the sounds that you can hear right now? And then I just want you to notice 3 things in the room that you're sitting in. It might be the plant and the light and the cardigan that's hanging on the back of the chair. But just look around you and notice 3 things in the room. And just be present. This is where you are right now, in this room with these people. And you're going to give the people in this room the gift of yourself, both in sharing vulnerably when it's your turn, but also the gift of yourself as you're listening to each person share. So it's important that we're present when we're listening. It's also something to learn about listening is that we can listen in ways that encourages one another or we can listen in ways that can diminish one another. And I'm sure many of you have had the experience of talking to someone when they're on their phone, and you might be sharing something trivial or you might be sharing something meaningful, but if someone is scrolling on their phone, or if they're sending a text message to someone else at the same time, or you're sitting at a cafe and you're sharing something really important and the person's phone beeps, and instead of ignoring it, they actually reach down and they pick up their phone and they pay attention to the phone, and you know they're not listening, you're not really listening to you because they're not really valuing what you're saying. That for most of us actually feels devaluing, and we can feel diminished, and it can cause us to want to retreat and withdraw from relationship in that moment. And so as you're listening today, I want to encourage you to be present with your body language, to turn towards the person who's speaking, to not fuss and fiddle, to not be tapping your foot or looking at your watch or staring around you, because they're all cues that you're giving to the person who's speaking that you're not actually really listening. This might actually be a bit tricky for the people who have children in the mix, so you might need to manage children interrupting, and it's fine if they do, but maybe you just want to acknowledge to the person who's sharing, if there's kids that come in and interrupt, just to pause and then to pick back up again so that they feel really valued in their listening. And the other thing I want you to encourage you to do is just to stay humble and to stay open and to stay curious in your listening, to value each person that's sharing as an image bearer of God. This person that you're listening to reflects part of God into the room. Listen to them as if they were Jesus and they were sharing. This is the value of honoring one another in our listening. So I want you to really listen well, and to just really listen humbly and openly to one another. Don't listen in order to give advice. Don't listen in order to fix whatever it is that someone's sharing about. Just listen in a way that gives your presence to them. And after each person has gone around and shared, I simply want somebody in the group to say, thanks for sharing, or we really hear you. I don't want there to be any conversation that goes on or any questions asked. Just simply let the person share what they share, and then let there be a pause, and then let the next person take their turn in sharing. So basically what you're going to do is each person is going to be given a maximum of 5 minutes to share. I'm just setting a time because we just need to be mindful of time. So some groups are bigger than others. 5 minutes is a good amount of time. Try to not share for 30 seconds. If you've only shared for 30 seconds, let someone in the room prompt you to share more. But if the timer goes off for 5 minutes, maybe just wrap up what it is that you're sharing. And so someone might need to actually set a timer on their phone for 5 minutes for each person, and take it in turns to go around the room and just share what the last couple of months has been like for you. I'll leave a slide up on the screen so that there's some question prompts if you get to a point like, oh, I don't know what to say, or I've forgotten what I'm supposed to be doing. There'll be some prompts on the screen to share. But basically, I just want each group to take the time to really listen, to get to know, to honor one another, and to create space for transparency and vulnerability, and for trust to grow and develop in your group. Now, of course, if anyone in your group shares stuff that is quite vulnerable and personal, please respect their privacy. Nothing should be repeated that goes on in your room. There should be like a cone of silence that falls on your group. What's shared in the group stays in the group. And of course, give each person the value of knowing that even if they share some difficult stuff that they've experienced, that doesn't define them. It just is one part of who they are. And so just honor one another's ongoing growth and development by not pigeonholing anyone based on what they share with you today. So 5 minutes per person. Take the time, practice sharing openly and vulnerably, and practice listening well and being really present and giving every person in the room the value of being heard and being honored with who they are. And then after your group has taken its time. So press pause on the video when the slide comes up with the questions. And then after each person has taken their chance to share, you can press play again and I'll just lead you in something to gather everything back up at the end. So have fun. I imagine that there was some real diversity of feelings and experience just expressed in the room as each person shared. And one of the recent things we did together as a community was I asked people if they could describe their relationship with God during COVID lockdown using 3 words. And then as many people as wanted to had the opportunity to share those 3 words just through filling out a little survey. And then Becca has taken all of those words and turned them into a psalm that expresses the diversity of feeling and experience of Central Church during this period in isolation and lockdown. And so I just really want to share with you right now what she's written. And so I've asked her to read it out, and we'll have the words on the screen so that you can see this piece of creativity that's been created by Becca, but by our community as well, as we've all shared our experiences of our relationship with God. So here is Psalm COVID-19 of Central Church.
Psalm COVID-19, a psalm of Central Church to Creator God. As news and germs spread around tables and countries, as borders closed and my life contracted, so did my heart expand. Never had I felt so tangled up with the rest of the world. Our church closed her doors, and singing songs with friends and fresh-baked bread just wasn't on the table anymore. Your body broken now for a COVID-19 world. I was both hopeful and terrified of time at home and contagious neighbors and the threat of collapse to our healthcare system, and how will I survive isolation, school, and no more hugs from friends. My life had been a current of raging water, rushing me in so many directions, and it was suddenly stagnant now, grinding to a sudden halt again and again, day after day after day. The space and quiet sounded like a gift at first, and many friends around me lapped up this long, strange Sabbath as cool water, soothing their weary souls. They received the Spirit as comfort and restoration, and I needed to hear their stories of goodness, nearness, presence, contentment, their sense of trust bringing hope to my own sense of absence. This slow season left me lonely, needy, and a bit resentful. I was waiting for a monastic experience of intimacy, enlightening tenderness, and skin to skin. You were distant, God, or maybe close but silent, and I felt neglected, raw, weary, avoidant of all the feelings surfacing without my community to absorb. Thank you for being there for me, Netflix. I saw people on Facebook finding revelation in sunrises and certain you were closer than before, but maybe I wasn't trying hard enough, even as I strained with my listening, my prayers for miracles and cures. Someone called this liminal space, and I sighed with the peace of being understood. Maybe this disorientation is a rite of passage along the way, enigmatic, mysterious, a breaking with what kept me numbly comforted before. Will this shifting space, this upheaval and undoing, lead us to something more reliable than certainty in its own tender way? The unsettled nature of my heart in these months has made it softer, more open to the voices and experiences so different than mine. Creation groans with labor pains on Darwell Country and a street corner in Minneapolis, and maybe this sudden halting and undoing is salvation to us. Even as death tolls rise and our racist history reckons with us, and I don't know what to think or feel or pray, there have been moments protruding, stubborn green buds pushing through the quiet, fertile soil, recovery in my spirit, love deep in my bones, new commitment with neighbors near and far, and light to my eyes. We are in this together, this I know for sure. Let justice roll down like the waters. With all the suffering and uncertainty and potential for more, even more pain, still, you, God our Mother, are pregnant, always pregnant, with healing for all nations and neighborhoods, and even for me, for us. You will draw us up to your chest, held close, ear to your heartbeat, warmed by your breath, and you will never let us go. Amen.
To finish off your time together, I just want to invite you to actually spend some time in prayer. How you do that is up to you as a group, and you can decide and pick any way to spend some time in prayer with and for one another. But two ideas, if you've got time for both of them, might be just to break off in prayers and pray for each other in your pair, knowing that you've listened to the person that's speaking, and you can just pray some simple prayers of encouragement for one another. And or then you can just gather in one big group and spend some time praying and thanking God for his goodness and his love for us, and just kind of gathering up all of that collective sharing and listening in a presentation of praise to God. So just finish your time together with some prayer and some time of connecting with God. If you've got more time, you might even like to spend a few minutes in silence, simply listening to God in a similar way that you've honored one another with listening to one another. Maybe you'd like to honor God by just simply listening to God and seeing if there's anything the Spirit of God might want to say in your own heart as you gathered. So take your time, chat amongst yourselves and decide what feels best. Pray for one another, pray just together in one large group, or even spend some time listening, but just take some time to spend in spiritual connection with one another and with God to finish up. And then bless you, enjoy your week, and we'll come back next time when we're all gathered for something different. Anyway, good to be with you, even though maybe I'm just on the screen. Anyway, love you all.